Oh, I got to change my background then.
Yeah. Going from the Bard to Picard.
Well, oh, wait a second.
There we go. Space.
Should that be my background? Or since this is Star Trek, hang on, maybe this should be the background.
Yeah. There we go.
I got to get into a
Starfleet headquarters in San Francisco. Cisco. Jambalaya. Okay. So
no, I think I got to go with this one here.
Maybe. Yeah. Space. My background's pretty black. We can pretend this is my ready room. Okay, hi, ladies and gentlemen. I don't know what kind of a video this is. We don't even have a title for it. We're picking our Star Trek crews.
Yeah, well, this is Jim and Gru.
Ensign Jim and Ensign Gru.
So this is completely a challenge by Gru to Jim. What was it you first said?
What did I say? I don't know. Pick your crew. I think I asked you, have we ever played Pick Your Crew? And you said no. So what we're doing is we're picking our Star Trek crew, our space fleet crew that we're going to go off into space on our little 5-year mission. And these are the people we want in all of these positions. So
now I assumed Pick Your Crew was pick your favorite for each position. But then it came out, Gru was going, no, I'm picking the best person for the job. And I was like, oh, so it's kind of a mix of what our favorite is and who's best for the job.
Yeah, and another stipulation is you don't have to keep the person in that assigned role. Like if the person in the show is a captain, but they have aptitudes and other abilities, they could appear as an ensign, or they could appear as a pilot, or they can appear as whatever. So you're not limited at all. You're just, who do you want in each spot? So
I can honestly say that I did not pick a crew full of captains.
I didn't either. I have one captain on here.
I did say that I pretty much I took all broken people.
Yeah.
But what are the jobs?
Okay, so the jobs we have are, we have the captain, we have the first officer, very important, going on away missions when the captain can't. The chief of security, that's your muscle, going in there, getting the job done when there's some Cardassians to fight or whatever you have. The chief engineer, this is the person who gets you out of all of the tough situations. Anytime there's a problem, can you do it in an hour? It'll be tight. Do it in 15 minutes, and they do it. Miracle workers of the ship. The doctor, if your captain's sick, who do they go to? Probably nobody, because they're full of...
I was iffy about the doctor, because I've never really there's been some great shows that don't have a doctor. Great sci-fi shows that don't have a doctor. So I was iffy on that. But then when it came time to pick it, it wasn't hard.
Yeah, I would say that all of the doctors in Star Trek are good. I can't think of a single doctor who's not a great and interesting character. Some of them I have some moral problems with. We might get into that later, but I think they're all great actors, great characters. So we're at doctor. We have your pilots. Gets you through those, you know.
Gotta have a pilot.
Yeah, you gotta have a pilot. How are you gonna move in space? You gotta have a pilot. You have your comic relief. Every good ship needs comic relief. You have your ensign, somebody who's maybe a little spunky, who can hopefully move up in the ranks. We'll see how they do. You have your science officer for all science things, space anomalies, astrophysics.
Oh, we have a science officer? I forgot a science officer.
Forgot the science officer. How are you going to do science, Jim, without the science officer?
I don't know. I'm like science by... I'll just put in Bill Nye, I guess.
Bill Nye. Well, my name is Bill Nye. I'm an actor from the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
What are you doing? Bill Nye's not in the edition. He's not in the Hitchhiker's...
Bill Nye. I'm Bill Nye.
Back to Star Trek.
Different guy. There should be Bill Nye in Star Trek, both of them. Science officer. Your love interest, because you got to have somebody to stoke those romantic fires when you're on a 5-year mission into uncharted space in the Delta Quadrant. And then you have your wild card slot, which can be anybody doing anything. And this was probably my toughest slot, because I still don't entirely know who I would put in here. I might go back and forth on that until we actually get to it, but it's number 11. This goes up to 11.
Holy, 11? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I've only got 10. Apparently,
wild card. You have the wild card?
I have a complete crew.
Do you have the wild card slot?
Oh, yeah, that was easy.
Wild card, love interest, science officer. You forgot the science officer.
Oh, I just picked a science officer. All right, let's do this.
Do you have your ensign?
Yeah, but he's not an ensign.
That's okay. Do you have your comic relief?
Oh, yeah.
You have
Let's
your
do
pilot?
this. I'll figure it out.
Okay, so you do have the 11.
Yeah, I think I must.
11 of 9. No.
Okay, are we going to start from the bottom, or are we going to start with captain?
Sure, let's start from the bottom. I might just change mine. No, I'll...
So ensign.
Yeah, I don't know. You go first. I might change this while you're talking. Your wild card. Who's your wild card?
At the bottom, I'm going to put ensign and wild card. I got one of each.
Okay, great.
Best guy for the job, Worf. Early Worf. He's badass. He kicks butt. But he's really just there to do everything. He flies the ship at one point. He's at ops at one point. He goes and kicks butt and takes prisoners when he needs to. Even though he's a Klingon and he shouldn't be taking prisoners, he kicks butt. So that's my ensign.
That's your ensign? My ensign was Nog. Nog, of course, began as R.I.P. Aaron Eisenberg, who passed away recently. Lovely, lovely guy.
Wonderful.
Not that I knew him, but from all I heard, he was lovely.
No, he did a wonderful job as Nog.
He did a wonderful job. He began as completely a rapscallion. This is the thing I love about DS9. All of the characters go through tremendous growth. So Nog begins as a typical kind of Ferengi rapscallion. He's always getting into trouble. He's a bad influence. He becomes a decorated Starfleet officer, and he becomes
a captain. I'm surprised you didn't pick him as your captain.
Yeah, he would have been a great captain. He goes through this amazing. There's that amazing episode where he basically goes into a holodeck program and lives there because he's recovering from PSD because he's seen some crap and he's lost his leg in battle and he's like completely changed as just a being. So Nog is like, no, you want somebody who's going to go in there and fight for you and who has capability for real growth. Nog, Ensign Nog, all the way. You know what? He'll start off as ensign. He might end up as captain. I've got that's why he's in this position.
One of my favorite Nog moments is when he's asking Cisco to sponsor him into the academy. And Cisco grabs him like, why are you doing this? And he goes, because I don't want to be like my father.
I know. It's so lovely. And like the thing about where some series, Game of Thrones, don't take time to develop things, that was really built up to. Like his whole character arc is really built up to. And it's also fascinating. He's friends with Jake, who's the son of a captain, who ends up being a journalist and a reporter and kind of a creative type. Nog is just basically like, he's just a kid who's playing hooky from school, and he ends up a decorated Starfleet officer. I love that. I love that.
That scene where he's saying he doesn't want to end up like his father, I like, because he's already come partway through his journey, and it's very interesting. And he doesn't want to end up like his father, except that Rom has a really interesting character arc himself. And I really like his character. He ends up doing fantastic things. And this is what Nog did not want to end up like.
The only character who doesn't change or grow really a lot is the one character you don't want to change and grow in the show, and that was Quark. Quark was always supposed to be... We'll see where he ends up. He was always supposed to be the comic relief, but even then, he got to a point where he's like, no, I can't stand these Jem'Hadar. They just stand around. They don't order anything. I want the Federation back. I know I'm usually neutral, but this is one moment where I want the Federation back. Things were normal.
Deep Space Nine did a wonderful job with the Ferengi, because in the Next Generation, they're so one-dimensional.
Yeah.
But Rom and Nog and the Nagus and Quark, they're all just...
Wallace Shawn and Moogie, the different Moogies they had. Chief Liquidator Brunt, as played by the one and only, who plays many parts, Jeffrey Combs. All great.
Yeah, he plays basically everything.
People who tell me they don't like the Ferengi, I'm like, what's wrong with you? Watch some good Ferengi stuff.
Well, Deep Space Nine, they figured out how to do Ferengi.
Even in TNG, there was that episode where that Ferengi scientist who was like completely passionate about science, so his own culture had shunned him because we can't make a profit off this, and he was just all about knowledge. So even then, they were showing different shades of Ferengi, which I loved. I loved it when they played characters against type. Or when races against their stereotype, because that's what Star Trek is about.
So I picked Ensign Worf, even though we never saw him as an ensign.
But he probably was at some point.
We just never saw him as one. And Drew picked Ensign Nog.
Ensign Nog and Ensign Worf. I like it. These are good crews.
So why don't you start us off on your wild card?
Okay, the wild card. So I did go back and change it. So here's the thing I should have said about wild card. A wild card you can also put into any position, right? So you can take your wild card and you can have two captains if you want. Or you can have, like, we don't have like a counselor or a therapist or anything, but you can have that if you want to add this person in. And again, they're not bound to any role they played in Star Trek. You can just promote them. So my wild card is Nurse Bones McCoy.
Nurse Bones McCoy.
I went with someone else for the doctor. I wanted somebody who would be enjoyable to have on the ship, who I could hang out with and talk to, who's maybe a little racist around the edges, but no, we can work. Obviously very smart, obviously somebody I would want to in my group of friends and in my trio. And you know, I already have a doctor, unfortunately, but I think he would be a lovely, lovely nurse. Bones McCoy. He's one of the funniest characters in Star Trek. I could not have him on my crew.
All right.
He actually replaced Kess in this wild card slot. The last minute decision. Because I do very much like Kess. Just a very nice grounded character, but I want to have some fun on my starship. Bones McCoy. Nurse Bones McCoy.
I'm making a change as I talk here, so I'm just gonna babble until I've made my change.
It might change.
But it's not the wild card that I changed. So my wild card is Security Officer Rios. Basically,
yeah, that guy. Okay, so no, we have to ask here.
He's got a first name. Cristobal Rios.
So is it Rios or is it the many holograms of Rios?
Well, no, that's a loaded question. That's loaded question.
Are you going with Rios? Or are you going with his many holograms? Okay, I'll say this.
So security officer is what Worf started off as, not chief of security, not like ensign or anything. We first saw him as a lieutenant.
That's true.
And he was just random security dude. That's what I'm putting Rios in. And first of all, he's broken. He's very principled guy. He's basically a young version of Picard who saw some fucked up shit. And we're probably going to get taken off of whatever social media we're going to put this on because I just swore.
This is not for kids. YouTube, this is not for kids.
Kind of guy.
Don't take us down.
Rios is the kind of guy who will swear when it is called for. And he's so broken that he has to create different versions of himself to console himself because nobody else can understand what he's gone through. I mean, it's pretty. I'm not going to give away any spoilers just in case somebody hasn't seen Picard, but like he's gone through some messed up stuff, and it wasn't
your entire crew of the starship Broken People could just be anyone from Star Trek Picard. They're all broken people.
I'm going to name my ship now after the first episode of Enterprise, Broken Bow or Broken Bow, whatever you want to call it, because broken ship.
Cool.
This is the USS Broken Ship. I'm writing that down.
We'll see by the end what I don't have a name for my ship yet. We'll see by the end what you'll help me pick the name. Just based on
it wasn't a requisite, but I've decided. So
I'll have to think about this going through. Okay, so moving on.
What do we have to do next?
We have a lot of stuff. We have I have on the bottom of my list your love interest and your science officer.
Okay, let's do love interest and science officer. I'm going to start us off on science officer.
I think so.
Okay, so there's a lot. There's a lot. And I picked a lot of science officers, but none of them have been put into the science officer role. And I picked 7 of 9 because I love 7 of 9. She's awesome. And she's not really a science officer. She's just really smart.
Yeah.
And Jerry Ryan's
science. Let's be right. Oh, so you're going with Picard 7 of 9, not.
No. This would have to be Voyager 7 of 9 because Picard 7 of 9 is more of like badass security chief.
She's more your security, yeah.
Yeah, or she
could be a wild card. She could be like your Han Solo smuggler type or something.
Well, she's certainly wild in Picard.
Yeah, she's certainly wild. Yeah.
Yeah.
You could have both versions on your ship. You have clones or something.
I put her down as science officer because she's basically got all the knowledge of the Borg. So
yeah. That's a good choice for science officer. I went with the classic. You can't get any more. If I want my science done, I want it done right. I want it done precise. I want it done entirely logical. Do you know who I'm going to say? You know what I'm going to say? Mr. Spock himself is the science officer. I can't think of anybody better for this position. Data is really smart. He was a contender, but his positronic brain is always getting messed with and things like that. Geordi is, of course, smart, but Mr. Spock is just, he will do the science right. You know what? Wesley Crusher would have been a good pick. Although he might disappear.
I couldn't pick Spock because I got him in a different slot.
Oh.
But when I said I was changing things around, it's because I had Dax there. And Dax is a close second. Because
so that's your science officer is Dax?
She was a close second because 8 lifetimes of knowledge, man.
Yeah. Dax might make an appearance later on. We'll see. Were you going Esri or Jadzia?
Oh.
Or Curzon?
Close second. This is going to be a really long video. If we go
They're all just Dax. They're all just Dax. They're all just
they're all just Dax.
They're all Dax.
Okay, so you got Spock, and we also said we're going to do love interest.
Love interest? Okay. You do yours first. Because I want to surprise you with mine.
You know me, so you know I probably would have picked 7 of 9 from Picard just because I think she's awesome. But that's the switch I made. I'm going with Kes because she's lovable.
She is so lovable. Yeah,
Kes is just
7 of 9 is like, you're never gonna forget that night. But Kes is like, I'm gonna like have a family with you. I'm gonna take you home. You're gonna meet the parents. We're gonna make this thing work. Kes is lovely. She's one of the underrated characters in Star Trek. She was my wild card spot.
If you
beat her out because Bones is awesome, but I love Kes.
If you're gonna have a family, you got to get started. 9-year lifespan, man.
Yeah, true. And she like gives birth from her back and all that, so it's weird and fun.
So
you know,
the bonus of taking her as the this is where my pig masculine side comes out here. The bonus is 9-year lifespan. Then you have to pick a new love interest.
Okay, so I did something equally as skeezy. So love interest, yeah. Hard to pick one. There's so many great men and women in Star Trek. Entities in Star Trek. So my mentality is, why not have all of them? And you can do that if your love interest is the female changeling from Deep Space.
Oh, that's not what I expected.
That's not what you expected? Because literally anyone. She could be literally anyone.
She can portray
a bit of a genocidal racist, but we can work on that. She's a project.
Makes for a spicy love life, I guess.
And she's up for it, man. Just every 5 seconds, link with me.
I honestly thought you were going to pick Q because he can actually be anybody.
That's true. But he might strand you out in deep space for no reason. Like the female changeling, I feel like if you get a rapport there, like, I mean, I think I just have to be you solid. Well, you know, I maybe
she is the female changeling is probably less likely to cause psychological damage to you. And she's a genocidal racist.
She is a genocidal racist. But you know what? It's like she comes from that pool. Like she is a project, but she's worth it for getting to be with everybody in Star Trek. I was going to say every woman. No, you could be with everybody in Star Trek. So yeah, female changeling, easy choice.
All right. So that's our love interest, Kes and the female changeling. Yeah, it's going to be a very interesting crew.
Good choices these are. None of these crews will function. They'll get off the dock and crash. Just into San Francisco Bay. Like...
You have picked so far enemies of each other, and I have picked all broken people.
Pretty.
So, shall we move on to engineer and security officer?
Engineer and
or do you want to do pilot?
Sure, we could do the pilot. What do I have next? Comic relief and pilot.
Okay, comic relief and pilot.
Okay, let's start with pilot.
You go first. I've gone first in the last two.
Okay, there's so many good pilots here. You got your Will Riker, who's one of the best decorated pilots in Starfleet. You get Tom Paris, who was picked just to do that job. I stayed away from Paris. I almost went with him, but he's a bit of a renegade. He kind of goes against orders sometimes. But I'm going Trip Tucker.
Mayweather.
I'm going, yeah, there's Mayweather. I'm going Trip Tucker here because I want somebody who's just going to be like a pal and going to get the job done. He's got a very good moral compass. He's got a good heart. Trip Tucker, that's going to be my pilot, and he can
wow,
like nobody's business. So there we go.
That's a good choice. Yeah. I didn't even consider him for pilot.
And then when we're done, we can go play that whatever Klingon volleyball or whatever they play in the holodeck. Like,
well, for pilot, I picked Tom Paris for the same reason because the best kind of friend you can have, and he's a broken person. He starts Voyager as he really is the character from The Next Generation that Wesley meets, Locarno, who gets the guy killed at the academy.
Yeah. No,
and it's the same actor. It's the same actor. It's virtually the same backstory. Yeah. And he gets Janeway gets him out of the stockade to do the mission with her. Yeah. And he's the I mean, it's been said many times, like Riker is the best pilot in the galaxy, and then later on, Tom Paris is the best.
But Tom Paris got them home, I will say. Well, some other things got them home, but Tom Paris got them home. Tom Paris is also the only pilot to go warp 11. He's the only pilot to ever do that we've seen in continuity that I know.
Yeah, but Will Riker hoodwinked the Cardassians.
That's true.
And Sulu was the OG pilot.
Yeah, he was the OG pilot. Like, there's a lot of good choices for this. And you mentioned Mayweather as well. I'm going Trip Tucker because I think he's got a little more spice than your Tom Paris. Tom Paris he seems like a fun guy to have around, but I feel like I'd have more fun with Trip. I just want to listen to him talk. Captain, I got to tell you about these subspace anomalies. You know, the interlocking power converters. You can say all the space babble you want, Trip. I just want to listen to your beautiful freaking voice. Go on, Trip.
Well,
party on.
I picked Tom Paris because the best kind of friend. Harry Kim was lost for 7 years on Voyager, and Tom Paris would break any rule to get that guy out of trouble. So that's why
we'll talk more about that later when we get to some of these other positions.
Well, and we know Tom Paris will break rules because.
Oh yeah. But that's kind of why I don't want him there. Because when I say I want a course to Ryza, I don't want him taking me into Borg space. You know what I mean? Like, I want to make him follow his orders.
Are you kidding me? Tom Paris would love to go to Ryza. What are you talking about?
Tom Paris is a rule breaker. You know, he's kind of I feel a little safer with Trip in the pilot's chair.
He settles down. He becomes a family man. You know,
he does eventually. It takes him 7 freaking years to get there, but what are you gonna do?
It's taking me longer, so
there you go. I should not be involved on any starships, so there you go. I'm the stowaway. That's the position I'm in.
Okay, so tell me about your comic relief then.
My comic relief is somebody who's already appeared on your list. I want to see if you can guess who. This is, in my opinion, the funniest character in all of Star Trek.
Really?
Someone who's appeared on your list so far.
It's got to be Rios and his many holograms.
No, it's not Rios and his many holograms. No. Remember, I'm not a big fan of Picard.
Oh, see, that's where I'm just gonna. That's it. I'm turning you off. I'm out of here.
What? The animated series was good. No, I haven't seen it. It may be good. It's got the original voice cast. Who knows? My comic.
Worf is your comic relief?
Yeah, none other than
really?
Mr. Worf Rojenko himself. Worf is the funniest character in Star Trek. Anytime I find myself quoting funny lines from Star Trek, Worf is involved in there somewhere.
You got a point.
He is so funny, and at the same time, you know, he's muscle, so he can kind of do double duty. Oh, I forgot to give him a position on the ship. I'm going to make him ship counselor.
Oh, I didn't give him a position. My comic relief doesn't have a position. He's just there to be funny.
Ship counselor, Mr. Worf Rojenko is
perfect.
My, sir, I am not a merry man. Klingon warriors killed our gods millennia ago. They were more trouble than they were worth.
I just watched Deep Space Nine again, and
he's so
Worf's
good.
a lot more serious in that one.
He's so funny in it. He's great. He's so like, I think I prefer him actually in that show, but he's fantastic. I love Worf. How can you not love Worf? I would never put him as the security officer because his efficacy rate is like 0. He's horrible at his
Everybody
job.
beats him up. Tasha Yar, Data, Riker, and the alien of the week. Everybody beats him up.
Everybody beats him up, yeah. But as the comic relief / ship's counselor, what is wrong with you? A warrior would not act in such a way. I have PTSD. I'll wait. For what? For you to get over it.
Okay, so my comic relief, ship's counselor then. Ship's counselor, Data.
I can actually see him being a good ship's counselor. He's very funny, too, for the same reason.
He doesn't understand anything.
He doesn't understand his joke.
Spock understands emotion better. Tuvok understands emotion better.
Worf gets emotion better.
The only one who doesn't understand emotion and people's psyche as well as Data, what little he knows, is the one from the one from Enterprise, the Vulcan. The Vulcan on Enterprise.
T'Pol, yeah.
Yeah, she just...
Yeah. I feel like in terms... You might correct me on this here, but the point of the Vulcans, or Vulcanians, as they were first called, was not that they didn't have emotions, but more that they knew how to control them, how to keep them in check. A lot of the ones that came... A lot of your T'Pols and your Tuvoks, great performances, but they played it very much, we don't have any emotion, where robots were. Tuvok was actually in the military in real life, so he came like this military bearing to it. But Mr. Spock, I feel, gave that kind of, I do have emotions. Like there was the time he thought Jim Kirk died, and then came back, and then he smiled. He was like, Jim! And then he was like, oh, good to see you, Captain. So he did have the emotions. They were just, he knew how to control them. And when he didn't, it was interesting. So I always thought he was the best Vulcan. I don't think that's a controversial opinion.
I thought Tuvok was a very interesting Vulcan because he mind melds with a serial killer and then loses control, and then he does a cross with Neelix.
Tuvix!
So he can experience pure. Neelix is just pure joy, and Tuvok, who is pure logic. I thought he was a pretty interesting character. That said, he's not comic relief. For comic relief, I'm going with Data because
that's fair.
Yeah, they were in the Next Generation. They're like, well, we have a guy who suppresses his emotion, so let's get a guy who has no emotion. And he generates some of the best emotional moments in all of the Next Generation.
Freaking Lau. I rewatched that a little while ago. It just, man. Hugs at the heart.
When the Admiral comes out and said Data's hands were moving faster than I can see, trying to save his daughter's life. Or the episode where he gets a girlfriend, and near the end she dumps him, and then she leaves, and he's just sitting there with the cat.
Yeah, and just petting.
Heartbreaking.
And the thing about Data too is, if you wanted to, you could go on a fun Sherlock Holmes style mission with him, and as long as you're not Geordi LaForge, you won't accidentally create life while playing your imaginary.
That's smart, apparently.
Yeah. Oh man, Geordi. Man, you had some issues, Geordi. You had some issues. How powerful is the freaking holodeck that on accident you can create life?
Yeah, and Geordi is not careful enough with his words, and he gets Data into trouble. And this is a great segue to pick my engineer, because I picked Geordi LaForge. Not because he's the best. He's not that bright. I just like him. I just like him.
He'd be somebody I'd hang out with. He'd be somebody I'd go on holodeck adventures with. When he had girl trouble all the time, he'd come to me for some reason. But when you could score more than Geordi LaForge.
Well, he always went to Data, and Data's the guy, as I just said, he got dumped by his girlfriend.
Like Data got more action than Geordi on that series. Honestly, I think Barclay
quite literally.
Okay, so we're on engineer. Well, we're
on engineer now.
I mentioned him in the last sentence. Reggie Barclay. Reggie Barclay is going to be the chief engineer. Reggie Barclay is brilliant. He's somebody who the brilliance in him was not seen at first. Then he was really given the chance to shine. He's a very human guy. You can relate to him because he has fears and insecurities, even though he's very confident. He became God at one point when he merged with the Enterprise, and And he's the reason Voyager got home. The
Yes.
engineer's job is to make sure the ship stays moving. The guy who I want as my chief engineer is the guy who's going to get us home, and that's Reggie Barclay.
Yeah, it's an interesting choice because, I mean, you pick Trip Tucker, who is the guy who got NX-01 Enterprise moving. But you didn't pick him as engineer. You picked Barclay. Or Broccoli.
Barclay is more brilliant. I'm sorry, Barclay. See, Trip Tucker did that from inside the vessel. Barclay did that remotely, and Barclay's always doing amazing things when everybody doesn't believe him. Like when there were the creatures in the transporter, and he was freaking out about it. Nobody believed them. Who was right? Reggie Barclay. Oh, Voyager's not lost. This isn't some subspace signal you're hearing. No, it totally was, and now they're coming home. You're welcome, cause Reggie Barclay.
And he's relatable because he has barriers that he has to overcome. Even when we see him 16 years in the future, when he's the commander to for Admiral Janeway, teaching together in the academy, when the doctor asks him where the Admiral is, he goes back to his stutter. And he's right back where he started the first time we saw him in TNG.
But that's somebody I like because they're human and you can relate to them. These characters who are action heroes who, nothing ever phases them. Well, you might as well be a cardboard cutout. Reggie Barclay is somebody I could sit down and have a conversation with. Some of them might go a lot over my head because he's just a brilliant, brilliant man. But I mean, he's also somebody who's not going to make you feel like crap, like ever.
Like because he's not the best at everything. He's very socially awkward. Unlike, say, Will Riker, who's the best pilot, the best ladies' man, the best trombone player, the best joke teller, the best with a smile. He's just the best at everything, and it's not relatable.
Yeah, he's not relatable. Yeah, that's the thing.
In case you haven't noticed,
don't get me wrong. I love Johnny Frakes. But I think my favorite interpretation of Riker is honestly, I liked him in Nemesis, but everything is just going wrong for him. And I liked him in Picard. Seeing him and Deanna together and their little one running around and they have this like pastoral life. I'm like, yeah, make me some pizza, Will. I'm gonna hang out with you and make some pizza. Will Riker is very likable though.
We got to put a new one in here. Which Riker do you pick? And you're picking
which Riker?
Yeah, which Riker is on your ship?
Which Riker is on your ship?
So
Picard Riker.
Picard Riker?
No, I'm amending it. Which Riker is on my ship? My Riker is gonna be the one that's hitting on Guinan. that's my Riker.
Mine.
I wish that your eyes were the stars and the universe worshipped the night. Shut up.
That's
Tell me more about my eyes. That's
I'm taking Thomas Riker, Lieutenant Thomas Riker, because here's why. Because Will Riker is good at everything. He's a good officer. He's a good family man. He's a good first officer. He's a good pilot. Thomas Riker gets none of that because he's got the double of himself who's done it all.
Yeah.
So he can't be the hero. He can't be the perfect officer, which is why he goes in and steals the Defiant and hits on Major Kira when she's with another man. And I'm like, no, he's the underdog now. He's not perfect at everything because that's already been done by his clone.
Yeah, you're right, Thomas Riker. Now, Thomas Riker, I'd have to sleep with, Netleth under my pillow at the very least. But I see why he is a more interesting character. But who am I going to hang out with? I'm going to hang out with the Will Riker that's hitting on Guinan, and he's going to get me a lot of action when we go to Risa. So that's the Riker I'm going with.
Well, because he's the best at being likable. Will Riker's the best at everything.
Likable.
I would have a beer with him.
I would have a beer with him. I would have a couple beers with him.
But the Riker I want on my ship is Thomas Riker because he's still got fire in his belly.
Okay, so choose your Riker.
All right.
We should also do a choose your Jeff Coombs. Which Jeff Coombs do you choose?
Okay, let's. Should we do that? No. Let's pick our security officer.
Okay. Yeah. Security officer. Okay. Cool.
You want to go first?
Yeah. So my chief of security, my security officer, is not only the best security officer because they can physically not be beat. There's only really one way or there's two ways to stop them. One is through disease, and one is through sequestering them for like 16 hours on their own. But it's also my favorite character in all of Star Trek. The story who I would argue DS9 is all about, and that's Odo. I absolutely love this character. He's fantastic, and you can't beat this guy because whatever you try to do, he'll physically just transform into something else. He is officious. He never stops working. He never needs to stop working. He'll make sure everything is secure, and he's seen some stuff. He has seen some messed up stuff. He can get through anything. I love this character. Again, we talk about how characters transform and evolve on DS9. He's the perfect example of it. Episode 1 starts off where they're going into the wormhole. I have to find out where I come from. And the course of that series, you find out where he comes from. I love Odo.
Comes from a race of genocidal maniacs.
Yeah, he does. But that's the thing I love about him. He is so isolated. He's literally the only one of his kind who's not a genocidal maniac.
Therefore,
so
by
alone.
the norms of his society, he is insane.
Yeah, according to his society, he fits in nowhere. The only way he can find a place to fit in is by literally going back and changing the minds of his entire society. If that's not a hero, I don't know what is.
It sounds like he's more than
by the female changeling, but come on.
It sounds like he's more than just a security officer, but good choice.
He is, but I mean, like, it's who's more qualified for this position? No one. No one in Starfleet ever has been more qualified for this position. Odo. Favorite character in all of Star Trek?
Well, I don't know. I think mine tops it. My security officer, Sulu. Lieutenant Sulu.
Oh, my.
Because he gets drunk and has a sword. That's
okay. Fair point.
He fights drunkenly with a sword.
I'll say this about Sulu. For somebody who's not in a whole lot of episodes, isn't really focused on too much, he made an impression. He really did make an impression. So you're right. He does get drunk and have a sword. Oh, my. I think he's probably one of the worst security officers, but...
Oh, and Sulu had a huge effect.
You're right. He does get drunk and have a sword. So yeah, you win. You win.
I'm a big fan of Voyager, and Sulu had a huge effect on Voyager because Sulu recommended Chakotay to go to the Academy.
Oh, true.
And he was also Tuvok's first captain.
Yeah, there you go.
So
there you go.
He's a big influence. I am a big fan of Voyager.
Chakotay is also someone I would love to have a beer with. He's somebody I'd hang out with. Chakotay would just be like, hey, Chakotay.
Yeah.
He's so like easygoing, but he sticks to his guns. He's great.
I was this close to picking Chakotay for my crew because he's great.
Yeah.
So
no, Chakotay's great. He'd be one of the he'd be like a wild card or somebody I'd just like to have there. Okay, so we did chief, we did engineer, we did chief of security. Let's do your favorite position, the doctor.
The doctor.
Let's get that out of the way because
sure you need to have. It's one of those like. I was gonna say most science fiction, like take The Expanse. They don't have a doctor because they don't need it. I was gonna say Battlestar Galactica, but you pointed out they have Doc Cottle.
Doc Cottle's great. You can put him on here if you want.
No bedside manner, and he smokes while he's treating patients. And not just treating patients, but treating a cancer patient.
Yeah. Yeah.
Doctor Who.
To be president.
Doctor
twice.
Who?
He does that twice.
Doctor Who doesn't technically have a doctor except Doctor Who.
Doctor. He's not a real doctor.
But when it
doesn't doctor mean soldier in his native language or something? So he's really not a doctor. He's more of a traveler.
No. The master actually says, "Oh, you picked a name, somebody who heals."
Yeah, but I thought they said, oh, maybe it was like in some other language. No. He interacted with this alien race, and the word doctor in their language means soldier or warrior because of.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean,
Smith era, yeah.
And the Daleks call him the oncoming storm.
Yeah.
Which
makes sense.
Doctor basically
he's not a
word
doctor
for them.
No, you could put in Nurse Rory, you could put in Martha Jones, but no, Doctor Who is not a real doctor. Sorry.
So I'm of the opinion that science fiction doesn't necessarily need a doctor, but it was not actually very difficult to pick a doctor.
No, but I will say, like, all the doctors are good. I don't think there's a single bad doctor in all of Star Trek.
Okay, yeah, that's fair. I mean, there's bumps along the way. I really like the emergency medical hologram, but at the beginning, it took them 2 years to even start fleshing Robert Picardo's character out. And then when they did, he was awesome. Probably because Robert Picardo is awesome.
So who's your doctor?
So my doctor is Dr. Bashir. Genetically
Nice.
engineered. He's a Superman. Basically, he's Captain America as a doctor.
Yeah.
And he's lovable. Like he was Deep Space Nine's Will Riker. He was Deep Space Nine's Chakotay.
You know, it's interesting you say that, because originally people reacted kind of adversely to his character, so they kind of had to like rewrite him and stuff like that. There was talk about him leaving at some point because people didn't like him. I always liked Dr. Bashir. Like, he starts off on the ship, he's this wide-eyed kid who's obviously very smart, but he's there for adventure, and he really grows and he really does some interesting things. He infiltrates the what is it, Section 31?
Section 31?
Yeah, he almost finds a way. And I this is one of the things. Deep Space Nine, I love it as a series, but there's so many great opportunities where they get really close and they miss. He almost find a way to convert the Jem'Hadar into an ally when he found the cure for Ketracel White and how to wean them off the Ketracel White. Like, he's that guy. He's got the genetically modified brain. All of the people who are GM like him, he basically helped them rehabilitate. And
he's the only genetically modified person in Star Trek who isn't crazy, pretty much.
And just him being that shows just, I mean, you get that a little bit, and you talked about the episode with OG Tom Paris when he helped Wesley manslaughter those people with that crazy flight maneuver. Just how smart you have to be to live in the Star Trek universe. You have to be so smart that parents are literally monkeying with their kids' brains and genetics to make them good enough for society. Because that he wasn't like I love the fact that Julian Bashir, not just the fact that it's a great actor, not just the fact that it's well written, not just the fact that I love his relationship with Miles O'Brien, which really grows as well, but the fact that he exists as a symbol of something that's really, really messed up in this utopia, and that they actually point that out. It's a great character. It's a great character.
I want to say that, I mean, his parents genetically engineered him to be this super brain.
Yeah.
And he's still relatable. Wesley Crusher, on the other hand, was written to be naturally gifted, a natural genius, and he's completely non-relatable.
Yeah, the most relatable he was when he killed that guy, because it's like, oh, shoot, Wesley, you didn't just do a bad thing. You did a really bad thing. And they're like, oh, my God, you're human. Thank you. Will Wheaton seems really nice, though, I gotta say. He seems like a nice dude, and he plays board games. So.
Will Wheaton is a nice guy.
Will Wheaton. Yeah. So my doctor.
Your doctor.
It's already been mentioned. Please state the nature of the medical emergency. I disagree with you about Robert Picardo. I thought he started off as interesting. He comes from this premise of he's a computer program that is supposed to operate on a very limited basis, and immediately he starts operating full time. They expand his power sets and what he can do. He begins to be able to move around on the ship more. He develops interesting relationships with so many different characters on the ship. He tinkers with his own program, and he kind of goes rogue at one point. And Robert Picardo is just an incredible, incredible performer. They wrote for him.
He goes rogue a couple of times.
Yeah, he does. He does. And he saves the day a couple of times. He has a family at some point, which they ask him, how does that work? And he's just like, it's a long story. I'll tell you later. Just on like some away mission.
The first time he has a family, though. He has a holographic family.
Yeah. Oh, that was really interesting, too.
And he's on the planet.
You talk about robots and computers making you sad. Like, that is heartbreaking. Yeah.
He falls in love with two members of the crew as well. A hologram falling in love with multiple crew members, and then gets married. He gets married in the finale.
It's great.
He doesn't get married. He is married.
Yeah, I love the EMH. There have been many EMHs. One was Andy Dick. One was Dr. Julian Bashir. They based an EMH program off of him. And of course, there's Rios and all of his various MHs, I should say. But I'm going with the OG, the emergency medical hologram. The Doctor, he's my Doctor. He's my favorite.
An interesting bit of trivia about him.
Yeah.
In the series finale of Voyager, Tom Paris points out, so the Doctor's wife goes, "Oh, when I met Joe," and Tom Paris said, 26 years, you couldn't think of a name, and finally you think of Joe? Well, he did have a name in the second season. He fell in love with a Vidian, and she named him after her father, Schmullis.
Yeah, I can see why he went with Joe. Also, Joel. It would have been a perfect name if he just had kept the L. But whatever, I won't hold that against him. He's Robert Picardo.
Well, a good choice nonetheless.
A good choice. So I think we're at Captain and First Officer, and that's it. We're nearing the end of our journey here.
Wow, we are getting close to the end.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we got to do First Officer, and because save Captain for last, of course.
Okay.
Well, First Officer was pretty tough.
Yeah. A lot of good choices.
We've already talked about how Will Riker was good at everything and friendly. We talked about how Chakotay was friendly, and he's not the good boy that Will Riker is. He's a Maquis captain. He's a bad boy. He's an outlaw.
Yeah.
So there's Trip Tucker, who's already made your list.
Yep.
There's Major Kira, who I had a huge crush on when I was young. So, and even now, because she's Nana
So did Dr. Bashir.
Yes, married to Dr. Bashir for a while, the actors. I had to go with the original, though. First Officer Spock. Because I grok Spock. He's a science officer. He's badass. He can knock you out by just tapping you on the shoulder, basically. Just little nerve pinch and out you go. He does teach Data how to do that, but I don't think Data's he's not great for First Officer. And Captain Kirk explicitly states that he's the best First Officer in the fleet. So, and I
if Kirk said it. If Kirk said it.
Kirk said it, and I trust Kirk, so I went with Spock.
Who are you to argue? Yeah, that's an amazing choice. Spock already made my list. He made it as a science officer, but yeah, I think what you need is a very human, and I don't mean necessarily in terms of race or species, but in terms of just emotional intelligence and intuity as a captain to balance that out. So I'd be interested to see who your captain is. But yeah, I love Spock. He's an amazing character. He's one of the best loved characters in Star Trek for a reason. And it's, of course, both the performance and the writing. Quinto did a good job too. Like, I'll say that. Kelvin Timeline, I think the casting in Kelvin Timeline is pretty good. So but I'm guessing you're going Nimoy Spock. I'm going Nimoy Spock.
Oh yeah, Nimoy Spock.
Yeah. So Nimoy Spock, he originated the role, and he is Spock. As the documentary.
I really liked seeing Zachary Quinto and Leonard Nimoy together.
Yeah.
Both playing Spock.
No, it was lovely. It was lovely seeing Nimoy in the video. It's it's great. So I went a little different. I think this is also someone who's been mentioned. I can't remember. It's been a while ago now. But you talked about someone having lifetimes worth of intelligence, and that's somebody who I want as my first officer. Somebody who have lifetimes worth of experience to guide and advise the captain and help make the right decisions, and is also an accomplished pilot and a science officer in their own right, and that's Jadzia Dax.
Also a warrior.
Also a warrior, yeah.
Only a warrior could win Worf's heart. She was also a former ambassador to the Klingon Empire.
Yeah.
And she was mentor to the captain of Deep Space Nine.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, she's the whole package, and she's also somebody who you can hang out with in 10 forward or quarks and play a little dumb jot when the day gets a little long. She's somebody you can hang out with and talk to as a friend. Yeah,
she consistently cleans Quark out at Tongo.
Yeah.
She drinks Klingon drinks. She almost falls in love with Julian Bashir.
Yeah.
Which she'd be a great catch. And
I love that couple though. That might be the best couple in all of Star Trek is Worf and Jadzia Dax. I'm not gonna slight Ezri. I loved Ezri Dax as well, who was the Dax that came right after Jadzia. I thought she was great. It was a very interesting character. I'm trying to figure out. I didn't choose this slug; it chose me, and I'm trying to figure out how to deal with all these emotions. It was an interesting take, and she even had kind of like a little family subterfuge mission there. I just had more time with Jadzia, and just she came kind of more fully formed and had more time to develop. So.
Well, Jadzia was easy to like, and she was the consummate Starfleet officer. She was
really was.
On Deep Space Nine. She was their version of Will Riker, likable and good at almost everything.
Yeah.
Ezri was even more interesting, in my opinion, Ezri Dax, because she's thrown completely off kilter. This is not something that she picked, and she doesn't know what to do with it, which makes her very interesting.
She was a great character, and it was a great interpretation of that character and this other side of Trill life. And like I'm glad she was there. It's nothing to do with her or the way she was written at all. We just had more time with Jadzia. And that's really what it is. But they're both great characters, but I mean I would go with Jadzia. I feel like she would keep more of a level head when needed to be. And the thing about Jadzia too is she had a giant heart. She was always falling in love. She was always open to that side of herself. She had a very logical and clinical side of herself. She had a code of honor, but she also had a giant heart, and like romance was not alien to her. And that's not just because of her looks, which she's easy on the eyes obviously, but she was open to just all of the whole of the emotional spectrum. She's a very complete human being. She's many very complete human beings.
I like how you say that she's very logical. I mean, being the science officer and a consummate professional, but there was the episode where she was willing to throw it all away to get back together with her wife from a previous host's life.
Oh, I love that. That's one of the best episodes.
And it would have meant the death of Dax.
Yeah. And then wasn't there that time she went off on like an honor killing mission, and like she might not have been able to come back to DS9, but of course Cisco let her back, because how can I replace Dax? You can't. So, but I mean, she was
and his mentee.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So, it's interesting that you picked her as a first officer, because that's a role that in the show, she was never in that position. She was the science officer of Deep Space Nine, and at one point she was the commander of the Defiant, but she was never a first officer.
Yeah, but I think she would. But in many ways, she politically, Kira had to be the first officer because of the Federation Bajoran partnership that was going on with the reconstruction of Bajor there. But I think Dax would have been if it had not been for that bit of politics. And that's something she never gripes about. She was obviously qualified. She still advised Cisco a heck of a bunch during her tenure there, and she still was more than above and beyond a member of that team and that crew. But it was never like, I mean, she had done it already, in other lives. She had done it already. It's just like, yeah, it's fine. Like, I still got to work my way up the ranks. Like,
well, she was the only, other than Cisco, at the beginning, she was the only seasoned Starfleet officer.
Yeah.
Because Worf didn't come along until later, who was arguably more seasoned than her. And Eddington, the security officer that came along, arguably just as seasoned as Cisco himself, but ended up being a traitor for obvious reasons.
Captain.
I got an idea.
Yeah.
I say we guess each other's captain.
Okay. Yes.
So for you, somebody, because you got a first officer who has an incredible breadth of knowledge, breadth and depth, a mile wide, a mile deep. I think you picked a first officer with that much experience, probably the most qualified first officer you can find, to back up a captain who isn't as qualified. So I think you picked the youngest captain in Starfleet history, James T. Kirk.
You were talking about Kelvin Kirk? Or original Kirk was too?
Well, yeah, Kelvin Kirk, he makes it even younger. But in the original series, he's the youngest officer to make it to captain. And then in the Kelvin timeline, he's even younger.
For you, I'm going to guess kind of the opposite. I'm cheating here because I know you, and you literally said earlier today, I wish I was Patrick Stewart. But I think you chose somebody like your first officer, like Mr. Spock, somebody who's very logical and often very reserved, maybe a little grumpy at times, but very diplomatic. I think you went with Captain Picard. And I'll go even further. I think you went with TNG Captain Picard and not Picard Captain Picard.
Yeah, it's good that you mentioned that because I didn't actually specify. But yeah, you were right. TNG Captain Picard, not even the movies Captain Picard, because my opinion of the Next Generation movies is that it's
they're
not
action movies.
The show.
No, it's not the same. They're good. Yeah. A lot of them are good, but they're very much an action franchise.
Yeah. Whereas the TV show was an adventure show in space.
Yeah.
And Captain Picard is he's not a battleship captain. He's an explorer. Yeah. He's an explorer and to some extent a diplomat. But yes, he becomes an accomplished diplomat during the course of the show. But he has a wanderlust, a pure, unadulterated curiosity. He just wants to get out there and learn and make things better.
That sense of adventure that comes all the way back from the original series, where their mission is to explore, and there's new worlds and there's phenomena, and just having your mind like an open book and ready to absorb the thrill of adventure and discovery that original series captured over that's Picard. He's an amateur archaeologist. You find a broken piece of pottery and he goes crazy like a little kid, right? I love that. I love the fact that he has that, and like he's refined and he's dignified, and he's got some things about him. If you cross him, like he can be very intimidating. A lot of the lower crew members, even some of the higher crew members, are intimidated by the guy.
Yeah,
well, you never snap at you.
You see a lot of different facets of him. You see, he falls in love a couple of times.
Yeah.
You see him go off on half-baked adventures. You see him fight. You see him fist fight.
Yeah. You see him captured. You see him tortured. You see him.
He won an award. I don't know if that was his first one, but he got an Emmy Award for when he was captured by the Cardassians.
Oh, I love that. I love that saga. That's, some of the best are lights. And of course, there was you're talking about another captain with experience. He lived an entire lifetime. He has an entire lifetime worth of experience already in TNG.
Yeah.
From that time on that, what was that called? Time Zero? I don't remember what it was called. It wasn't called Time Zero, but the one where he learns to play.
Oh. Well, I thought you were talking about the fact that he had been a captain for many years before coming to the Enterprise. But then,
on top of that
show, he lived a whole other life.
Yeah, so he's got experience up the wazoo, and like he was a Borg. He was the first reclaimed Borg. Like he's got this breadth of experience. And just that's a great choice.
And also,
are there bad captains? I don't know. Are there? I don't think so.
Well, he's lovable, but he's also a tortured man. I mean, he lost his first ship, and then he ended up losing the Enterprise as well. Yeah, he was a Borg, and that he's tortured from that, and then he lost his whole family when the vineyard burned down in Generations.
Yeah.
He's gone through a lot of hurt.
And his love was never requited.
How so?
He never got together with Crusher. They never got married.
Well, actually, in one of the timelines, he did. In
one of the timelines.
Well, you could say that about everything with Star Trek.
One of the timelines, everything worked out perfectly.
I mean, Worf in one episode went through like 17 timelines and was did everything. But he gets married. He's married in the finale of The Next Generation, and she took his name, Captain Beverly Picard, which was kind of weird. She's always Crusher.
Beverly. I always thought she would get together with that ghost from that one episode.
Well, she did.
Do you remember that episode? That infamous episode where Crusher gets it on with a ghost?
Yeah.
Of his ancestor, I think it was.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's not that strange considering that Riker got it on with somebody who had no gender.
I love that episode. I love that episode.
Brilliant episode.
One of
but
my
it's
top
really
10.
strange.
Holy crap. You're talking about transgender rights before anybody knew about transgender rights. Like, that episode is brilliant. I don't care. People are all like, oh, well, it's actually saying blah, 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 and all this stuff. No, like, screw you. This episode's ahead of its time. It's wonderful. It's beautiful. It might be my favorite. It might be my favorite Riker romance, because these two really just genuinely fall in love after being so long.
Yes, it's a great romance. I always thought of it more about like, I never really thought of it as transgender rights, a parable of transgender rights. It's just like person rights. Well, yeah, I mean,
there you go.
And this episode came out before gay marriage was legalized in North America.
Long before.
Way before. Heck, I mean, there's so many firsts that Star Trek did, and to tackle that, I mean, they tackled racism with the first interracial kiss, and then Dax had the first primetime lesbian kiss. They tackled so much, and well, that episode with Riker is one of my favorite. There's so many.
It's top.
I think
top
I have
10
about 100 favorites.
Yeah, top 10 TNG, easy for me.
So you had no problem guessing.
Can you guess mine?
Well, I think you picked James T. Kirk. I have a feeling now that I was wrong.
There are no bad captains, as far as I know. Well, I mean, like, main captains, like, you might be like Captain, blah blah blah, like Chris
the Captain of Equinox was pretty bad. I mean, when you are torturing and murdering other beings to make your ship go faster. You're a pretty bad captain.
But like, I mean, in terms of, even then, that's an interesting character. You know what I mean? But there are no bad captains as characters. This one is kind of a controversial pick. It's not James Kirk. I love James Kirk, and I'm kind of sad he's not on my list, because I'd love to just drink some Arachnagino with him or something. But I think with this captain, I prefer my coffee black. I prefer some black coffee. That's right. It's Captain Catherine Janeway.
Oh.
Yeah.
A solid choice. She's definitely you said there's no bad captains. She's one of the better ones, though. I mean,
Janeway is my favorite captain. Just as I'm guessing Picard is your favorite captain.
I would put Janeway as an honorable mention, though.
Yeah. There are no bad captains, not really.
She's the interesting thing about her is so James Kirk was the youngest captain in Starfleet history.
Yeah.
And when they came out with the Next Generation, they was like, we're going to have a more seasoned captain. He's the captain of the flagship. He's been a captain before. He's not necessarily the fighter who jumps in head first. He's a bit more contemplative. He's a diplomat. He had Will Riker to be the guy who jumps in, head to toe into everything and gets himself in trouble many times. And maybe that's why it takes him so long to become a captain. And Janeway's kind of in between that. She's younger than Picard, but she's more seasoned than Kirk. She's contemplative, yet she also jumps in head first. I mean, she's an excellent captain who gets lost on the other side of the galaxy on her first mission as captain.
Yeah. But they get home. Most of them get home.
Yeah.
So here's my thing about Janeway.
She ends up being one of the finest captains in Starfleet history, probably only next to Captain Picard and Captain Kirk.
So here's my thing about Janeway. So a lot of people have some issues with Janeway, specifically how she doesn't like how the timeline works out. So she goes back and meddles with it, so all of her friends can have a slightly better life and things like that. When like everybody got home, and people are like, you shouldn't be messing around with time. To that I say, I mean, first of all, temporal Cold War, right? Right? It's not like people haven't done this before. Everybody has messed around.
Yeah.
Everybody has broken. I think at one point they asked Picard, how many times have you broken the prime directive? He's like, oh, like, I don't know, 16, 20. It's like they do it all the time. All of these captains are breaking the prime directive left, right, and center. So that's a buy. The other thing is, there's no hard and fast rule that says you shouldn't mess around with time. It's probably a good guideline. Here's the thing. Janeway messes around with time. Everything works out, and all of her friends live better for it. That's the captain I want in the captain's chair. The one who's like, nope, I know what the right course of action is. I'm going to take it, and we're all going to be better for it. Janeway is someone who has more balls than all these dude captains combined. She is someone who, if you piss her off, she will hunt you down and make you pay. And here's the thing about this captain, more than any others. I like them all. But the nice thing about Star Trek is a show about moral dilemmas, right? Sometimes you see a character where you're like, I don't really agree with you there on this issue, even though I like you as a character, or there are other issues I agree with you on. And that's kind of the interesting thing about it. With Janeway, I'm always like, no, you got it right the first time. Like, wherever her moral compass is pointing, consistently throughout the show, I'm on board. I'm just like, yeah, this is clearly the right decision. There's no questions with this captain. So for me, my favorite captain, obvious choice for the captain's chair for me, Captain Catherine Janeway.
Interesting the way you put it there, because I don't always agree with what she does. I'll give you this. Unlike any other captain, she is constantly in moral dilemmas. Not facing them from time to time. It's constant. And
like the question of hell alone, like that's like you've earned your admiralty at that point. Holy heck.
I'm going to go back to the pilot when she makes the decision to blow away the caretaker, his space station. And they bring up the fact that we could have all gotten home if you didn't do that. And I'm like, wow, that's a tough decision. I don't know
the needs
that
of
I
the
could
many
make the same decision that she did.
Outweigh the needs of the few.
Yeah, but who's the many and who's the few?
The many is the planet full of people that she saved.
I don't know them.
That's not what the quote is. The quote is not the needs of the many who you know and like. It's the needs of the many.
Well, what about the needs of the Federation? I mean,
that's not the morality here.
Billions of people.
The correct morality is the best possible outcome for the most number of people.
And the Federation.
You're arguing with your first officer here. I want you to realize you're arguing with First Officer Spock on the Starship Broken People over there. Like, I mean, I don't think he would find your assessment logical. You know?
Except he goes back to save just one man.
So Spock is a hypocrite. When does he go back to save one man? When was that?
He goes back to save Kirk twice in both timelines. He goes back to save Kirk in both timelines. Both Spocks do it.
When?
He goes in and sacrifices himself to save original Captain Kirk, and then dies. And also
are you talking about the Wrath of Khan?
Yeah, and then
he's literally not just doing it for Captain Kirk. That whole
he's doing it for Captain Kirk.
I think that's a part of it. I think that's a big part of it. I think he's doing it so that Kirk won't have to make that choice. But he's like, no, you're not going to make the no-win choice. I'm going to make the no-win choice. And like,
so
I still do think
in that case he's doing it for Kirk.
I still do think he's being logical, though. I still like, well, somebody has to do it. And like, maybe you're right. Maybe that's the emotion coming in. But regardless, at the end of the day, whether him or Kirk gets radiated and dies in that situation, one of them has made a choice for the greater good. Spock would still be happy with that logic. I'm not giving you this one. And Kelvin timeline, well, we can debate all day about the Kelvin timeline. It's not going to change things. We have to pick our favorite Jeff Coombs. For me, it's easy. It's
one. We can't pick three. It has to be just one.
You have to pick just one.
You know what? I've got to Google, because I could name about 5 or 6 of his characters. but I'm sure there's 15 or 16 of them.
There's only like 3 I really remember that really stand out. In my brain, he's played so many though, like you forget them. You're right.
I'm not even sure that his Wikipedia page will name all of them here.
Wikipedia got overloaded and crashed with all of the Jeff Coombs Star Trek roles.
I'm pretty sure there's actually some characters that he played that never got named. Because there's Wei Yun, and then there's Brunt, and then there was another one before we meet Wei Yun. Although I'm gonna have to go with the Andorian, and I can't remember.
From
Shran.
Enterprise.
There it is.
Oh yeah, Shran.
Because he's not a psychopathic killer, but he's actually fighting for a laudable goal. As Wei Yun, he's engineered to fight for the Dominion and to worship the Founders.
Okay.
But as Shran, he picked his side. Obviously, he grew up an Andorian, but he fights because he wants to protect his world, and which is the same choice that Jonathan Archer makes. And yet they both ended up on opposite sides. And then eventually they ended up in the Federation together. So it's a huge roller coaster ride that he goes through.
That's a really good point. That's a really good point. I can't argue with that character arc, but I will say this. You know, we talked about the number of Jeff Coombs roles, right? You know, my pick for love interest is somebody who can literally be anyone in Star Trek. What's better, one Jeff Coombs or many Jeff Coombs? So with this choice, you don't get all of the Jeff Coombs, but Wei Yun is a clone race. So I'm not going with Wei Yun. I'm going with all the Wei Yuns. We're all Jeff Coombs. I have an army of Jeff Coombs. Suck on that, Jim.
Totally valid, because you got psychopath Wei Yun, you got strategist, military dictator Wei Yun.
You've got whipped Wei Yun.
You've got Jem'Hadar traitor Wei Yun.
Yeah.
Then you've got the guy who you've got the Wei Yun who just betrays the Jem'Hadar, and then they kill him for it.
Yeah.
But then you've got the Wei Yun that betrays the Dominion to follow Odo, and that's the Wei Yun that got me. He's fascinating because he's engineered to worship the Founders, but then he chooses to worship just one of them, and thus, by definition, betray the rest of them.
Yeah.
So
yeah, you're right. You're right. You remember more about this than I do. I didn't.
Well,
see it too long ago.
I actually just watched the whole series again recently.
Oh, did you? Oh,
yeah.
That's right. So you came.
I've been doing my research. I knew this was coming.
I rewatched TNG recently. I just watched Picard, and I'm trying to get my sister into DS9. We're a couple episodes into the first season, but we haven't. The thing is, every time I sit down in front of a television, I'm doing something. I'm like painting, or I'm drawing, or I'm doing something. So I'm not paying attention. I don't want to miss a minute of DS9. So I'm like, when is there a time when I can sit down in front of a television for 40 minutes and give it my full attention? It's like I've got no time.
You'd think it would be now when we're cooped up at home and can't go out.
But I have to put my crew together, Jim. Guinan didn't make it onto either of our ships.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like it.
Because she kind of she's above captain, that's why.
Yeah.
Although an argument could be made for why is she not the ship's counselor?
Yeah, there's a great video by Steve Shives that says she's basically a better counselor than Troy, because Troy is kind of a horrible counselor. And the kind of linchpin of the video is they show an example of, I think it's where Troy loses her empathic ability and is thinking about retiring from being a counselor. And Guinan counsels her back into being a counselor. Guinan is literally the counselor for the counselor. Yeah, no, Guinan is great. We had to say no to so many good characters. Like, again,
we did.
All of the
I think
all of the Cardassians are great. Like I can't think of a bad Cardassian. They're all wonderful. Frickin' Kai Wynn, just all of these wonderful characters.
Oh yes,
Captain
Kai
Jellicoe.
Nurse.
I like Captain Jellicoe and Admiral and Nechayev and all these people. Like they're all kind of assholes, but they're fun and they kind of got a good moral compass and things like that. There's so many good characters.
Well, everybody has a compass. Two of my favorite characters are from Deep Space Nine, and they have their principles. I wouldn't say they're necessarily principled, but they know exactly where they want to go.
Yeah.
And that Garrick and Dukat, the two best Cardassians, in my opinion.
Garrick and Dukat. I would go with Dukat over Garrick just because he was the OG. He appeared as the first Cardassian in TNG, much like Quark as the first Ferengi, who then became a character later on.
Yeah, well, Captain Kirk was the first captain, but you didn't pick him as your captain.
Well, technically it was Captain Christopher Pike from that pilot.
Okay.
But no. Who is your favorite character in all of Star Trek?
Oh, this is going to be another hour.
Another hour. Just the favorite character.
That's I don't think I can make that down to just one, because I could say Garrick or Dukat. Jake Sisko is fascinating, especially when you see old Jake Sisko.
Oh, that was great. Oh, and the time when he was like seduced by that muse, that was a really, like, as a writer, that's a fascinating premise. Do you give up your life literally for work that will be remembered, but like you're having your life, or if not more? That was fascinating. I love that. Jake is great. I love Jake.
If I had to pick one, well, I mean, everybody loves Will Riker, but if I had to pick one, it would probably be Captain Picard, because I was an impressionable youth when I met him on the screen. When I saw Captain Picard on the screen, and he was a role model for me for 7 years. So
yeah, I will say this. He's what? Sorry.
And Patrick Stewart.
I will say this.
I would probably say that he's not only the finest captain, but he was portrayed by the finest actor that they've ever hired.
That is a claim you can make. He definitely, obviously, like, he's Shakespearean trained and all of that. I think they were all pretty good actors.
There was a lot of good actors.
There's a lot of good actors in the show. Like, I do think there are some weaker links when you get to some of the lower ranks and stuff like that in terms of their acting jobs. The captains are great.
A lot of them turned out great performances. You might not think of them as the strongest or most skilled at what they do, but they turned out good performances.
They really did.
Which is kind of what the definition is, right?
Yeah. I will say Picard is probably the best part of Picard. I think
is that why they named the show after him?
That's maybe why they named the show. His dog is pretty cool too, number one. But I mean, no, Picard is that's totally like just awesome. Whenever, and again, it's that moral center, right? Like they kind of flipped it where the Federation is all messed up and the captain is the moral center of the universe and it's him against the world. I get why they do that narratively. It just, for me, it doesn't make sense in Star Trek. But yeah, anytime he makes an impassioned speech and he's just like, no, this is like, you can tell it's coming from a real place. Like he's not phoning that in.
Captain Picard rules.
Yeah, he does, but not as hard as Janeway. On that very contentious note, so it's 1:30 in the morning.
We need to wrap it up.
Let's wrap this up. Trek Drek. That's what I'm thinking. What do you think about Trek Drek?
Well, we've got a couple of hours of it now.
Yeah, we can call this series Trek Drek. At the end, you get to the title. What do you think? Consensus?
Absolutely.
Trek Drek, Episode 1. Choose your starship. Whoa. We just entered the holodeck.
And long life.
Live long and do good things. Cheers.